right, so campus reform correspondent Austin Brown recently spoke with Tallah Al-Sharif. Al-Sharif, president of Students for Justice in Palestine at Youngstown State University. That's in Ohio, of course. And he repeatedly declined to condemn Hamas. When asked to condemn Hamas, Al-Sharif repeatedly instead condemned violence from Israel against Palestinians. Here's part of that exchange. Listen.
I understand you condemn the violence on both sides, and of course, specifically though, do you condemn Hamas as an organization and as a terror group?
Okay, I think that the way that you have been labeling it as saying both sides, and you kind of are equating it as we're kind of equating Hamas with Israel, right? Hamas does not have a military. We don't have. I'm not in here to support Hamas. Okay, just to let that out there. But I'm just saying that I don't think we should put them on equal footing. I think that Israel is the one that has a military. Israel gets funding from the U.S. government, $3 billion each year.
Now, the man from that interview is Austin Brown, a student at Youngstown State. He's with me here today to share what that was really like, what was going on at his campus. Austin, good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So, all right, so she obviously won't condemn Hamas. She's not going to. That's not going to happen. You see these protests in the streets from Youngstown to London, and the support for Israel is dwindling because this is the education that's being passed around at places like Youngstown State and elsewhere around this world. What is the actual temperature on campus, do you think, overall, when you talk to students? Here's one example. Well, what's your overall feel when it comes to those that think Israel is right, those that think Hamas is right, those that think neither side is right?
Fortunately, most students on campus still support Israel and understand that this was a terrorist act perpetrated by Hamas. This group in particular seemed to pop up overnight just after the attacks took place. I was quite surprised to see that they had an Instagram account and were already planning events. And when I went to the event where I interviewed this individual, they were painting our school Spirit Rock with a pro-Palestinian message. Obviously, from that interview, she was unwilling to condemn Hamas, deflected the blame back at Israel, and even at one point tried to say that Hamas is not a militant organization. So obviously, these ideas being spread around campus are fringe, but ridiculous nonetheless.
Do you find there's a lot of tension now with you and her? It seemed tense, the conversation I was just watching, because she knows what she's being asked, but she's sidestepping the question clearly. When you see that sort of an exchange, is there tension? Were there rallies or protests on your campus in support of Palestine or Palestinians, any of that, the flags that we've seen in so many other places?
There were no rallies on campus, but there were a few rallies that were off campus, and this group was partially responsible for organizing those events. As far as how tense the interview was, it was tense to a certain degree. I understood going into it, though, that when I asked these questions, they were going to be maybe upset about having to answer some of them. One of the main things to keep in mind, though, is when asking some of these individuals questions like this, they've never been challenged on the viewpoints that they hold. Colleges tend to be a monolith of thought, unfortunately, these days, and it's usually coming from the top down with professors pushing a certain ideology and the students going along with it. So without that ability to critically think about these issues, these students have never really been challenged on a lot of the views that they hold.
Well, and that's the problem on college campuses today. College campuses used to be a place where you had this robust exchange of ideas. Here's one idea, here's another. All the free speech possible, which is the best way to sort out good ideas from bad. Let everybody talk, and then you can decide, well, I agree with that, and I don't agree with that, and that's the best way to, sift it down to something that makes sense to you based on your life experience and the things you've been taught. It's not the way it works anymore. Everything's sanitized. Oftentimes, I don't know how it is on your campus, but oftentimes conservative students, they don't say anything because they don't need the hassle, they don't need the pressure, they don't need to get yelled at, so they just, they go along, get along, even though they don't believe a lot of what they hear. Is that something you experience as well?
Yeah, certainly it has been. Fortunately, I've been able to lead a lot of productive conservative groups on campus, advocate for a number of conservative issues. But unfortunately, what we've seen is that the same students who call for diversity, equity, and inclusion and things of that nature are anything but inclusive to the people in our groups. We've had some of our members be harassed. We've had people that are slandered online, including myself. So it has been anything but a welcoming environment for conservative students. And unfortunately, the school has done very little to prevent the things that have happened to our group. Every time we bring it forth, the people are let off with a little slap on the wrist when anything goes through student conduct. So there is very little actual attitude that these things are wrong and any action being taken against the students to show them that that's the case.
So accountability, consequences, for misbehaving, for trying to silence anybody who doesn't have your same ideology or whatever it might be. Nothing is what you're saying. And again, the conservative students are pushed to the margins. They're marginalized by the behavior, not of the students there, but sometimes of faculty, because that's also been my experience in talking to kids from campus reform all over this country. The faculty will marginalize the kids and dismiss and poo-poo their ideas as long as they don't agree with the orthodoxy being put forth by those people, right?
Well, it certainly is the case. Writing for campus reform for the last couple of years, I've been witness to a lot of instances of that sort of thing exactly. Recently, the Leadership Institute's campus reform reported on an incident in Stanford where there was a lecturer who actually rounded up Jewish students in a classroom and forced the pro-Palestinian ideology on everyone in the classroom, going so far as to say that the actions of Israel were comparable to that of the Holocaust. So there is obviously a very extreme attitude being perpetrated in the classroom and being disseminated by these professors. And the students have become more receptive to these ideas, I suppose. And instead of critically thinking about the issue at hand, they take these, and the classroom has become nothing but an echo chamber. And then we see that broadcast more broadly across the campus.
So what happens if you speak up then, Austin? What if you speak up and say, hey? Because I used to do that all the time. Of course, I was a troublemaker then, and maybe I still am, and I'm okay with that. But I used to say, hey, wait a second. You're teaching a class here, and all you're sharing here is your personal opinion, which is not based in fact. It's based in feelings. And I would call people out for that in high school and in college, and as an adult as well, I guess. I hope you do the same. Do you have a chance to do that, or do you just sit, they screw up my grade and people just sit quietly? I'll give you the last word.
I've been a member of student government at my school for the last 4 years. I'm in my 4th term right now, and I have done everything that I could possibly do to hold the professors there accountable. I've brought it forth to the members of the executive committee during different administrations, but unfortunately what I've seen is a lot of those people have been left-leaning themselves. So they're very unwilling to actually hold these professors accountable and take any meaningful action against them to ensure that happens.
Yeah, we got to move the needle. We got to speak up and be heard. We have to embrace the First Amendment and speak up whenever we can against things that are nonsensical and just flat out wrong. Austin, thank you for doing what you do.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. There you have it, Austin Brown from Youngstown State University. All right. Coming up after the break, people have learned their lesson since the last lockdown. At least I hope so. It's vitally important to have a good supply of medications on hand for times of emergency. Peter Galuli will join me with some ways to get prepared straight ahead.